Might not be on the list. Absolutely. Oh, never mind, somebody else. Sorry, get out.
Probably the first time in a couple of years this computer's been in this room. So.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience for a few minutes here. We're going to go ahead and open the June 5th Design Review Board meeting. Hello, how are you? Stephen, I guess you're taking care of Tim's position today. All right, any announcements for us, or just want to roll straight in?
I think we have one announcement, and that is really just we're trying a new minutes taking program.
Okay.
So if we could all just be cognizant of that and speak into our mics and all of that good stuff, that'll help us out.
Absolutely. Always a good reminder. And if you have not turned your mic on, make sure that it is on and engaged. All right. Thank you. We have a request to approve the minutes from April 3rd and May 1st. Does anyone have any comments on those or care to make a motion?
Move the approval as presented.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Stephen, I think that bounces back to you for number 2.
So you'll have to forgive me. I may not operate as Tim has historically, because I've only been to one of these meetings previously, and it was a special meeting. So we'll go ahead and see what we can do here.
All right.
Item number 2 is the Inlet Beach Circle K. This is a request to approve by development order. It is project number MIN 24-000040. It was reviewed by Tim Brown. This is a minor development order application that was submitted by Bowman Consulting Group, Ltd., on behalf of Woodland Asset Management, LLC. They're requesting approval to develop a 4,700 square foot convenience store, gas station, restaurant, and associated infrastructure on 1.63 plus or minus acres with a future land use of mixed use in the zoning category of village mixed use. The property is in District 5 and identified by the parcel IDs in your staff report. If I could please enter the report into the record.
All right, so noted.
I'm assuming he just kind of reads this statement in here that says, based on the information provided, the proposed project meets the minimum technical requirements of the scenic corridor standards identified in Chapter 6. If you have any questions, I can attempt to answer them. If not, I'll turn it over.
Okay. Any questions of Stephen before we head to our applicant?
I was just going to ask the general question. It's not important if it's some point before we can engage in our discussion.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the staff could make a general description of the items
Of what we're doing.
the
Yeah.
purview that we're looking at.
So just in general, kind of moving forward, you would like the staff rep to go over what is actually needed for review?
Well, maybe if I just clarify, I'll give you an example of connectivity of this parcel to adjacent parcels. Is that within the purview of the DRB, or is that something that TRC has already opined on?
So I will say that this was at TRC yesterday morning. It was tabled. The committee voted to table it until some further traffic, pedestrian sort of access study could be provided based on some concerns of conflict on that Wall Street exit or access, ingress, egress. So I think that certainly if it's within the scenic corridor standards where it speaks to any requirements for access, I would assume that would be under the purview of this board.
Some of our applications, when they come through as majors and minors, do or do not include signage, and so sometimes Tim would highlight if a particular proposal does or does not include the signage review. Since there's not signage included in this one, I would assume that this one is not, but just as other informational pieces that we typically get.
Sure. Now, would that be something that's usually in the blurb or in his kind of opening statements?
In his opening statements.
Okay.
And sometimes it's just questions that we ask and kind of get feedback on. So
Okay.
There's not a...
I don't see it mentioned, so I'm assuming that's not the case. Are there usually pictures of or graphics or anything?
Right, yeah, we typically have the information for review and approval of those. If we don't, that's, fine too. We just typically don't talk about it if they show examples of it in the
Sure.
in the text. Or
Do
in
you
the,
just sort of make it a condition that approval does not include the
U-
sign
usually we
component
do.
or something?
Yeah, just
Okay,
to be
that-
clear-
that
clear
makes
on it.
sense. Okay.
That kind of get you for today, or?
Yeah, well, maybe not for today, but certainly for now. I'm ready to
Yeah,
hear the
we
staff
have lots of
presentation.
discussions about where our purview kind of falls, as some of these applications have been.
Can you give
Yeah.
just a very brief overview of what the discussion was this morning on ingress egress for this particular?
For yesterday morning at
Oh,
the
yesterday,
technical
yes.
review committee meeting?
If I could just expand a little bit, when I mentioned connectivity, it included that, but it also has to do with the connection.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah, yeah,
So
okay, yep.
it appears they are keeping the connection to Shade's parking lot, correct?
That's how it is currently proposed, yes.
And it appears that the curb cut from 98 remained now? Because at one point it looked like it wasn't there.
No, it's my understanding that Public Works requested that go away. So there is the single point, the cross connection with Shades, and then on the other side, the north or south Wall Street, whatever that is there, there's a right in, right out.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, is it okay? Would
Yeah.
you like us to route our questions through you?
No, absolutely
Okay.
not. I try to be a little bit more conversational with our meeting, a little bit less formal.
Okay.
Just because we are more of a, in most cases, we're not an up or down kind of vote. We're more of a assisting the,
Yeah,
the
okay.
design. So no problem with that. I do want us to kind of keep our board discussion to a minimum until after we've had a chance to hear from our applicant too. So that's kind of the only order that I like to follow.
Okay. And,
So-
okay, just one more general question?
Yeah,
then?
absolutely.
Okay, so would it be a fair statement that the documents that we're reviewing reflect, I'll use the example of the driveway connection on the northwest corner of the property. TRC has commented in a manner that might go away, therefore the documents we're reviewing are
I would say that there's a chance there could be some site redesign. There's certainly some reevaluation of the current design occurring, but it may not result in redesigning of the access points.
okay. And I'm not trying to ask staff leading questions, anything like
No,
that.
no, no. You're
Just trying to get the ground rules so that when we talk to the applicant, we know what we're talking about.
yeah, no, absolutely.
So, as a scenario, let's say the board decided to approve this project, the scope.
Mhm.
That site plan were to later change, and I would suggest that if that would be a significant change. Would this project have to come back before the DRB?
That's a great question.
So I would think that it would probably be on a case-by-case basis, dependent upon the how substantial those changes would be. I mean, I also think that if there is a concern that the board has, you could certainly add a condition to your approval, indicating that if the access changes, that you all would like to see it again. If that's, again, if access is part of the scenic corridor standards that you all typically review, and you're concerned about that, and you want to see it again if it changes, I think that could be part of your motion.
And just to be super clear, I'm not trying to get into the Highway 98 and traffic-related issues, properties from an urban planning.
Sure. So I will say that there was not discussion at the meeting of the connection with Shades, but that was not necessarily a concern. I know that there's an easement that still needs to be kind of buttoned up for that access point, but it was really the idea that was brought forth from the public, that the way that they're routing the traffic there will lead to direct pedestrian vehicular conflict on the wall right away, more so than it would at any other point, really, that it could be, or the existing 98. So The tabling was to provide the applicant time to kind of address some of those concerns, potentially in a better way. But the site's tight, right? It's got some character that lends itself to not really having a lot of design or redesign abilities there, but it'll be dependent upon what that study kind of demonstrates there, I think.
Any other questions of Stephen before we move to our applicant? Or okay, I think we're good. Does our applicant care to come up and make a presentation or?
Good afternoon. This is Victoria Diaz from Bowman Consulting, and I'm here to request the approval for DIAC. I'm here to request the approval for DCS store Inlet Beach, and if you have any question, please let me know. The architect's supposed to be here, but he is running late, so if you have any question for him, I can just take notes and tell to the architect.
Okay, so my first question was going to be if we had color elevations and building material and paint samples. I'm guessing that we do not, since our architect is not present.
Yes.
And I assume those weren't submitted as part of our package.
We submit all those stuff, like the picture of the material board and the elevations.
I did. I was looking through the book because it's not in the online sample. So. I mean, it was only like 400 pages.
Yeah, this one was.
I did not see material board information or color renderings. So if anybody else see those in the packet, I did not.
I did not, and I was going to ask, do we have fuel canopy drawings too in here? Did anybody?
That was part of the architectural hope that we had.
Oh, yeah, because
Yeah.
I know they're a separate submittal with these type of projects.
They should all come in under the development plan. I mean, it should all be part of the.
Yeah, I did not see them in here.
I didn't see it
Okay.
either. Okay. So I don't feel like we have the information that we need to review the project or for it to be, I mean.
I understand that. I did submit those, but on Enegorb, but I don't know why they are not there. I submit a big package, and maybe it's because I submit the material board in a different like in a different document. Yes, I labeled one like DRB insert, but the architect sent us like later the material board, so I submitted in a different PDF. So maybe that was the issue.
Chairman, if it's helpful, I'll make a motion to table this until later.
Yes.
If we're going to, Stephen, from process standpoint, if we're just gonna defer, go to the next project until our architect arrives, if they arrive, do we need to make a motion on that, or can we? Okay. Okay. All right, so if we want to relocate that one to after the ACE project, does that work for everybody? So that'll be before our discussion on the land
Prior
development
to
code.
ordinance.
And if the architect isn't here at that point, I think we're gonna have to move it to next month.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
So we have a motion, second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Good.
Is anyone else having an issue loading this project, it being 214 pages?
Yeah,
I
I got
had-
to page 42. Ooh, it
Okay,
started
yeah, I
moving
couldn't
again.
get it to
I
keep
had to
pulling up
download it onto my,
and
um,
save it.
save
Okay.
it. Yeah, that's the only way I could view it.
Is there a way to tackle that in the future where we can maybe divvy it up or?
Well, it also kind of looked like there was a double set of documents, like they uploaded it twice. I had a hard time seeing if there was any difference between the sets. So,
Crashing, trying to get to those back pages, especially for the elevations.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it on here with us for later. Thank you.
Okay, Stephen, we'll go ahead and move on to item 3.
Okay, this is the Caring and Sharing of South Walton. This is a request to approve by development order. It is project number MIN 24-000073. It was reviewed by Tim Brown. This is a minor development order application that was submitted by O'Connell and Associates Consulting Engineers, LLC, on behalf of Caring and Sharing of South Walton County Incorporated, requesting approval to add 723 square feet to the existing building, paving the existing driveway, expanding the parking area, and providing new landscaping on .58 plus or minus acres with a future land use of industrial and extractive uses and a zoning category of light industrial. The property is in District 5 and identified by the parcel ID in your staff report. If I could please enter that report into the record.
And noted.
Thank you. Based on the information provided, the proposed project meets the minimum technical requirements of the US 98-331 Scenic Corridor standards contained in Chapter 6. If you have any questions, I, again, will attempt to answer them. If not, I will turn it over.
All right. Does anyone have any questions of Stephen on this one? Okay, thank you. Does our applicant care to come up and present?
How you doing?
Hi.
Thomas Brandon with O'Connell and Associates. Just to give you a quick little bit of background on the project, it's an old office building that's within that industrial park that's been there since the 80s. Caring and Sharing is currently across the street and purchased this building as an expansion to their business. They're proposing to use this building as extra office space, as well as storage and distribution for their food pantry. We are keeping the existing building. We're adding a new facade and doing a small addition to the back and sides, removing some sheds, as well as paving a drive aisle all the way around for deliveries and distribution. If you can see in the site plan, there's a small garage door. A forklift will come out and do their food distribution right out the back.
Okay. Any questions of our applicant? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anyone from the audience care to speak on this one? All right, and seeing no one. Any discussion from our group?
Improvement.
I think it's
Oh, yeah.
definitely an improvement. I think the facade updates are going to be fantastic, and as well as cleaning up overall site and the pavement, landscaping there along the edge.
The fence panel height meet the standard at 60
I don't think we have a height requirement.
in the new ordinance?
It's I think the only place in the code that has a height is if it's in the front yard setback. Isn't that correct? Yeah. So. Oh, yeah, you,
No,
sometimes
you're
I
not
ha-
waiting on
no,
me. I'm
we
just
have-
trying to get this to load and it won't. So I'm gonna
yeah,
use the book.
we have 2 copies of it for that
Um,
very reason,
yeah.
so.
Are we handling signage in this approval? Because I'm not seeing.
Yeah, there's no signage in the
All right.
package, so I'm assuming there's none for the project.
And were there any samples submitted for the facade?
There's a sample board. Are there physical samples?
And while I'm up here, one of Tim's comments was that there is a 6-foot maximum fence requirement. Within-
Maximum?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, and we had proposed 8 foot. We've changed it now to be 6 feet, so we
Okay.
do meet that.
I did see the elevation of 6 foot on the fence though.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me where the front was.
Oh.
So I was trying to figure out on the facade of the building, which one's considered the front?
Usually it's the higher order street, regardless of which direction the building faces.
So where's elevation?
So that would be your, is that west side? Yes, sir.
I'm Carl Stewart with DAG Architects. The board here represents the street elevation, and I believe it faces east.
West elevation?
West. Excuse me, west,
Okay, west.
yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, this is actually on Lynn Drive, not on Highway 98. And the board, there's no stone, tile, or brick, so the material board just represents the actual paint chips and actual paint color.
Thank you.
Quick question for the applicant. You show gates at either end of the drive. Would you assume, is this typically closed off, that loop around?
Yes, sir. The 2 activities they would open the gates for is one, food delivery into the facility when they unload, and then also when they distribute the food, people will drive around the back. They'll load cars in the back of the facility, and then they'll drive out the other end.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Anyone care to make motion?
Yeah, I will. I'll make a motion to approve agenda item number 3.
We have a motion?
I'll second.
Motion and a second?
For
Uh,
clarity, signage is not included in our.
Yep, and without signage included, yep. Is everyone ready to vote on that one, or are we, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Stephen, item 4?
Okay. All right, item number 4 is the Ace Home Helpers of Santa Rosa Beach, LTM. This is the request to approve by development order as a project number LTM 24-000068. It was reviewed by Tim Brown. This is a less than minor development order application that was submitted by Dunlap and Shipman, PA, on behalf of Ace Home and Garden of Lynn Haven, LLC. They're requesting approval to add a 1,000-gallon propane tank filling station on the east side of the existing building on 2.15 plus or minus acres with a future land use of mixed use in a zoning category of village mixed use. The project is located in District 5 and identified by the parcel ID in your staff report. If I could please enter that report into the record.
And noted, thank you.
Thank you. Based on the information provided, the proposed project meets the minimum technical requirements of the US 98-331 Scenic Corridor Standards contained in Chapter 6. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them.
I have lots of questions.
Yeah.
So we previously saw this to approve the use of allowing the larger tank in this location. So this was the site plan coming back for that. My online packet did not include any plans, either approved ACE plans or plans of the proposal. All it has is an elevation. I also don't see anything in the book. Was there anything
There's
else
nothing in my
submitted?
book either. No.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you want to let the applicant
Okay.
approach about that?
Yeah, we can. I had emailed, so I wasn't sure if that was included or not. That is,
No.
none of that was
in the
included.
packet,
The
no.
staff report and then a single elevation.
Single elevation.
The elevation that's sitting in front of you. That's the only graphic we have.
But not this.
Not any of the plan set information or anything else.
Well, it was, we actually printed these off of the staff report off the website. And,
Really?
yeah. So I don't know what happened, but I will say, through no fault, I'm sure, of anybody here, there has been some glitches lately. So,
And that's exactly why I was gonna ask, because.
yeah, I don't think it, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, you know, we uploaded them and we sent them up, previously. Of course, that's how Tim was able to get the review done. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off so you guys take a look at it. I'll bring it up there if that's okay.
Yes, please.
I just feel like that's, you know, no need in doing all that.
So the last time you were here, there was a discrepancy in the site plan that you brought for the discussion and the approved site plan. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to compare and look at. So this is your current site plan.
That is the current.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Which
I
way
just
do we want to go?
I'm trying to make sure I do what I'm supposed to.
No, no, absolutely.
You have a plan with you that shows how circulation works around that propane tank? That would give us an idea of where the gate,
Where the concrete
Goes,
pad
where
would
the
be,
yeah.
where the sidewalk would connect.
Well, so if you'll turn this around. The sidewalk along here in the front, this is all just off the sidewalk on the, I guess, north side of the sidewalk. And there is just a simple gate here, and they,
Here on the front or here on the side?
behind, like, there's already an existing gate there, that's what we're using to connect it. So this is just right here behind this plant, if I understood. There's,
That side, like flowers and that kind of thing.
yeah, there's some landscaping that's on, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
I'll go back over here.
You can turn it on.
Okay. Does it lift up? I don't know if it does. It doesn't look like it does. So, in particular, and I'm doing, this is awkward, so, this side of the building here is where they have landscaping materials and different things. The proposal was to have this right there off the sidewalk, and the gate that goes into the landscaping, this has got a surrounding, it would go in beside that. This is only for their, like, because when people come up to do it, they're just gonna open it up, do the tank, and take off. This is, I'm not sure what you're asking, so I'll make sure I'm clear. This is all we have as far as the layout, and then this is what they anticipated. Yeah, sorry. Just being able to have somebody pull up into the parking space, do what they need to do, and then take off and leave. So I probably need more direction if there's something.
So,
I'm not driving around it, if that's the question.
no, that's not the question. So we're just trying to ascertain exactly what the site conditions are and what we're proposing them to be. We assume that you're not walking through mulch bed or plants or shrubs to get into the gates, but that's not shown on the plan. We had previously talked about bollards, where they were gonna be required outside the fence, inside the fence. We don't see bollards on the plan. we just don't have enough information, and we didn't have anything in the plan set to look at. So if that's all that you've got is just rectangle there.
So, I guess maybe that there's a misunderstanding. There's not a lot of direction in the code when it comes to a propane tank.
Right.
One of
yeah.
the problems that we had in this conversation, I'm gonna go back over here. This
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
awkward. One of the problems that we had in the conversation was that, the statement was, they needed architectural plans, and I said, there aren't any because it's a tank that you purchase and install. There's no architectural plans. We actually can't get any. So we gave them the information on where it was going to be located, and the engineer put in the fencing area, and then an architect, landscape architect, drew that plan for us to submit as to explain what it is. If the requirement is to have bollards protecting the tank, right? If that's the requirement, they will be inside the fence. They can't be on the outside. That is, I think that would be unattractive personally, but
Right.
if you feel like it needs to be on the outside, we'll make that distinction. I would like for us to get very clear distinction, and possibly an order saying this is what we've approved with these conditions, and then I can move on to the DO. I would rather not come back, so I kind of need to know how you want to run this through.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's just that in order to evaluate the site plan, we have to have a site plan. So when I imagine a site plan, I imagine the hardscape, so I would need to know where the sidewalk is connecting. If there's a concrete pad that the tank is mounted to, what the limits of that concrete pad are versus the limits of where the planting bed around it would be. We don't have a landscape plan. On the elevation, there are shrubs showing, where you've got shrubs on an elevation, but we don't see that on any kind of plan, so I don't know if those elevations are shrubs in front of this fence or that fence, or in front of the sidewalk, behind the sidewalk. And then since we had specifically asked to make sure that we knew where the bollards were going to go, to see, just because we know that code will require them, so we just wanted to make sure that they were located on the plan in reference to all the other things, so that we could see that too. That's just my personal take on it. I assume everyone else has.
Yeah, I mean, if this were a dumpster, I think the code treats it like a dumpster. It has to be fenced and/or landscaped, and I think
that's the problem, is that there isn't. So one, I remember discussion about if bollards are required, we'll certainly have them installed. I don't remember we need to see all of that in there. I don't remember that, so I apologize. And it's not that clear, the staff didn't come back with, these are the things we expect to see. So, and maybe that's because of, well, regardless. Where we are right now is, to be clear, because I don't do landscaping, I don't do those very much, and I've only reviewed a few of them, so I'm sorry. But if you're asking for us to say, for the area where that is going to be, to have more detail of how that's going to lay out, square footage of stuff, I'm not fully understanding.
So here's an example.
Mhm.
So on this drawing, you have called out native shrub 4-foot height. So typically, if most of the native shrubs are going to be wider than they are tall, so we're looking at something that's going to be 6 foot in diameter unless it's sheared. So do we have enough room on the plan to have a 6-foot shrub and a sidewalk? Where is that? Where is that located? Is that going to create a hazard then because you've got a 6-foot shrub hanging over the sidewalk? It creates more questions. There's not a code requirement that you have shrubs along anything other than your front facade, right? So showing them on elevation is great, but then we don't have a plan to compare it to, so you're showing something that we don't know where it is or where the access points or sidewalks are. So it creates questions from my perspective of just trying to figure out what we're looking at.
And I can appreciate that, but to his point, the code doesn't address that, so we're at a position where we're putting in a propane tank. We will certainly put in the bollards as required. It's gonna be fenced, and as far as landscaping, there will be something. That's for the aesthetics only. That is not because we were asked to at least have something there to make it look nice, coming from Publix. This isn't, you can't even see this property from the highway right now, and when the new building is built, you won't be able to see it then either. That's not to discredit that you have a review here, but I'm saying that we've been here, this is our second time, and we had a significant struggle getting here. So, I know, we shouldn't, it's a propane tank.
No, I agree.
Or
But I
add some
disagree with
language or
that
very
comment, 'cause
clear.
it's
To clarify my
circulation.
point- oh, go ahead.
Circulation, safety, and security are what we're really asking for in more detail. So that's what it is, because this is a giant propane tank. I mean, this is not necessarily something that goes in every day in a facade like this.
At
So-
every Ace Hardware, there is, so
okay,
I think
for
that
every
they're
Ace
gonna-
Hardware it is,
yeah.
but not everyone in our area has this in their yard, right? So,
And just to clarify my comment, as an example, if you showed a dumpster and just had a little rectangle and had a fence around it, and there was no driveway connection to it and that type of stuff, we would have those questions.
yeah.
So my point in mentioning the dumpster is that while a dumpster may only have to be fenced, we're interested in knowing where's the fence in relation to whatever bollards are around the dumpster, how do you get to the dumpster, that type of stuff. So I was intending to be helpful. In other words, if the landscape architect needs some direction of what do we expect the same type of information that we typically get around a dumpster.
Well, I think we just need a site plan. We
But you
don't
mentioned
have a
site plan.
site plan in our review today, which is what we were expecting to have upon re-review, was to have what was presented last time versus what is now, and the comments that have been addressed before, to show that security
I mean, I'm
and
convinced,
circulation has been addressed.
I'm convinced based on your comments that the propane tank needs to be located where it is,
Mhm.
because it needs to be proximate to a parking space so that a person can carry their
And
propane tank
when they
back and
came
forth.
previously, because
Yeah.
the a weird reason that they had to come before.
So for
is because
history,
it's
just
not
to
allowed.
clarify on the
Yeah.
record, for history, we had to come to the DRB to get a deviation for 1,000-gallon tank because the code says up to 1,000 and then it says over 1,000.
Right.
Not just 1,000.
Yes.
And our clarification was, so regardless of that issue, you cannot have more than 80% of that tank full at any given time. And so for that reason, they gave us a deviation for the 1,000-gallon tank. And so that's what you're talking about, the weird,
Well, because it's that triggered line between creating an industrial district and being able to be in a commercial
Oh,
district.
certainly.
And so that clarification point had to be identified. And at that time, we said, yes, this is the most appropriate place on the plan. Your argument for that makes sense. Bring us a site plan. So that's kind of where we expected. And
Do you have, the site plan that you have there, is that what the landscape architect provided you?
This
Or-
was done by Emerald Coast Associates, the site plan, the one that, this black and white one. The color rendering, the propane tank, that was done by the landscape architect.
Okay,
And-
just to clarify, the site plan that you're looking at in half size right there, does that equal the site plan that we just saw on the back of that board? Or is that a different?
yeah.
Because we don't have either of those in our possession right now, so.
Right, which, and I'm sorry that it didn't upload or download properly or whatever, but this is the one,
Mm.
yeah, this is the one that I'm looking at.
Right,
This is the one
but
here.
to our chairman's point, there's the only identification we have there is just a few dimensions, which we already kind of approved that at the last meeting, where the location was. The things that we were asking about how people would interact around it for security reasons and safety reasons and circulation reasons don't seem to be addressed on this particular site plan. So to Madam Chairman's point, that's kind of what we were looking at, is how people will interact on a drawing that's been submitted to show that this is what we're actually approving. Does that make sense? We're not trying to be a pain, but
Well, I understand what you're saying,
It's-
I do, I'm looking at a distance between the fence and the edge of the sidewalk is 10 feet, and a 5-foot sidewalk, there's a 5-foot distance.
mhm,
Now, to be fair, engineer prepared this, the landscape architect prepared this,
mhm,
and I'm submitting them to get a tank,
mhm.
permit. And so, forgive me if I'm a little flustered on it, because the code's not specific, and neither was the planner. And the language of, would you be having bollards? Of course we would. So that's all. I did not consider saying, hey, I need you to blow this up on a bigger plan so they can see the dimensions of everything. Because I didn't.
Or include the bollards maybe on the,
Or the limits of the
Or-
concrete pad,
yeah.
because we don't actually even
Well,
have.
that, unfortunately, that would be the engineer, because we indicated having that, and he said he had diagrams and information. So when we got it and we submitted it, my understanding was we had a page that had the pad in here. So I do not see that. I thought we had a pad drawn, you know, a typical, so that you could see what it would be. The distance of that, I mean, not that it matters here, it's not on the site plan, but it's not as big as the entire tank because it has a footer size, and then the tank is a little bit over, but I think it's just, it is what it is. So,
But see, that's great information to know,
Yep.
because the question could be, well, is it just small and under the pad? Does it go to the limits of the fence? Does it extend past the limits of the fence?
okay, I see what you're saying, but, right.
Yeah, and is that fence on its own footers? Does it tie into a monolithic pour with that whole concrete pad, or what's happening with that area?
Right, so
So- and
so
then if
the
you have-
vinyl fence, the boxing around it is just around it, and it does attach to the fence that's behind it where the landscaping starts.
Mhm.
That's not what your site plan shows. Though. Your
Right.
site plan shows the vinyl fence being enclosed upon itself and not connecting back or provide, because what I kind of expected was, due to the space, that you would have 3-sided fence and then utilize the existing open picket fence
Yeah,
as
he
the
has
backside.
signage along the front where the placard is, and along the back, it looked like, to me, it looked like he was saying this was the gate opening that attaches to the back of that, but that's just, because it's not clear on this part either, on his legend. Well, I grant you, this is not as clear as it could be, but I mean, I think where we were following is that he was, either way, I've got to go back to him and find out where he put the page for the pad, because that is not included in there.
So, I mean, I think that it's important to see the limits of the fence, the vinyl, the new fence being proposed, exactly where it's going. If it's tying into or creating just 3 sides, or if it's completely enclosing the tank so that there's a gap between the vinyl fence and the open picket fence, which would be weird. And if there's where the gate is and where the access would be. Is that, I mean, that to me those are the important things of trying to figure out exactly what we're.
And did we talk last time about a white vinyl fence? Because the one out there now is aluminum black.
Right.
We did not talk about the materials of the fence.
Okay.
Do
I
you have an
wouldn't wanna-
opinion upon the
I
white?
wouldn't want to see them different.
Right.
I mean, you got black aluminum that looks good with some brick piers, I believe, out there, stone piers, and then this vinyl fence would just be, I just don't, it wouldn't look good. It's my opinion.
What is your thought on the screening if it's an open picket aluminum fence?
I would rather see it open picket aluminum with landscaping in front, just so it all matches. Because I don't think we allow vinyl fencing. I don't know that we've ever approved one either.
Melissa, does this extend further east of the existing fence that's there for the landscaping? There's the garden center it's fenced in. Does this go further east than that? It's just forward of it,
Right.
correct? Okay.
In essence, if you were looking at this like Legos, it would just be a little box just in front of that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a grass area there now, and that's where they're going to put it down at.
Yeah.
There's
That's
a
what I
bunch of
was-
outdoor storage there now, but that's where that's going to go.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, it's
that
just gonna
aerial
be a-
there, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly where it's going to go. But that looks pretty deep.
Really want to see how this is secured
Well, the
as one
depth of,
area.
the depth of this fenced area around the tank is about 13, 14 feet.
Okay,
And
that's
then
probably
there's
right.
area between that and the area between that and the sidewalk.
Okay.
Since I'm getting the sense that we're probably going to continue this item, can I add, I'd like to know how it's going to be lit, site lighting. I'm assuming there'll be some lighting associated with it.
I don't know the answer to that. I will ask them. I wasn't anticipating. They have site lighting around the building. I wasn't anticipating special lighting just for the tank. But if that is something that they do and they just didn't mark it, I will ask for that.
at this point, I think we're trying to make a list. Applicant.
I would really
Okay.
like for you guys to suggest changes to your code, because this is the second time for the
is the next
deviation,
item.
and this is well, I read that, it doesn't mention it, okay? I
Well,
read it.
It actually, well, it
So-
mentions dumpsters, yeah, so maybe we.
It doesn't mention that, but I think that from an applicant perspective, if you're submitting a site plan, you're going to anticipate all of the hardscape elements of that site plan to be shown and labeled and identified, all of the ingress and egress of that,
I think,
for,
so let
for
me-
whatever scale that's going to be.
For the people who, first of all, you guys are professionals in your field and interested in this particular topic. What I am doing is helping an applicant through the process. Normally, when if this was a subdivision or something else that I dealt with on the daily, I would be reviewing the material and telling them what they had to do and look for the problems. In this case, I will tell you, there's nothing about propane tanks. And when you go and try to find something, anybody, anywhere that's done a propane tank, you get nothing. And unfortunately, I've looked up a lot of stuff on propane tanks. It is not helpful. So this information that we're talking about right now, I agree, first of all, the fence being different is, unattractive, and I understand that completely. What I'm looking for on this part is, okay, we can show the bollards and all that kind of stuff. But now when I'm seeing this and I'm saying, okay, I mean, to me, this whole thing is the site plan and this is the location of a propane tank. What I'm asking you now is, because it's not typical, people aren't usually coming up here for this. You usually have somebody who's installing it, doing it, and they provide more information. Like an installer usually, like even with a pool, the guy installing the pool tells you the dimensions. And what we have, I mean, typically, like, I don't go up here as a planner and say, hi, how you doing? I'm going to tell you about this pool. I've never done this before and I don't have one. So I'm just saying, like, this is what I'm saying is we didn't have an installer for that, so I'm trying to get the information that you need for this, but I really do think that in instances like this, it's a little atypical. You have in your mind what you're looking for, but it's not clear and it's not in the code. And so that's a little frustrating. And then, of course, I got to go back and tell the client, we got to start over, because that's what it is. I've already been to this engineer twice. So just saying.
And I think that it's unfortunate that your engineer did not think about providing, where's the sidewalk connection? Is that pour going to be just under this, or is it going to be connecting into my existing sidewalk, and where? And showing a gate location. Because that, to me, I can't imagine giving a site layout plan and not having that information on there.
I do think that his little dashed lines, it looks like a italicized quote, is where he anticipated gates.
That's a line type, and that is not that is the nature of drawing the enclosed box. It's the gate symbol would be different.
I understand.
I don't. I mean, there's just not a. So
The access isn't clear. The location of the fencing, as denoted as what you're calling the italicized line there, is clear, but the access is not clear. This is what we also did discuss in the last meeting. However, I do recognize your frustration.
I absolutely recognize the frustration
Yes,
on it.
we don't like this. As far as the applicant is concerned, would you be willing to take a list from Madam Chairman on things that you need to address so that this item can be satisfied?
I would want a detailed list, because I'm going to have to fix it and they're going to be upset. So I do need to, I'm writing notes, but I'm sure it's not everything that you want. And I know that's not your fault, but I do think that if you're looking at code amendments, you need to have a little bit better declaration of what that is. So, and I have always said that. Kelly knows that. I'm not opposed to, I like it to be more clear than less ambiguous.
I agree.
So,
So I think the first thing would be the full limits of the new hardscape that you're adding. If it's just under the tank, if it's a connection to, the sidewalk from that. If the material is not a poured concrete sidewalk, what is it? Are you walking through mulch bed? Are you walking through grass? Are you walking through gravel? So what are you, so right now we've got grass. So anything that's not grass, anything that you are doing to add, should be denoted on the plan. So if you're creating sidewalk, if you're creating a gravel field, if you're creating the new fence, if you've got gates on the new fence, I think those things need to be located and labeled. If you are adding new site lighting, that should be on there. If you're not, that's fine. It just, if it is, it just needs to be denoted. If you are including landscape, it would be nice to know on the plan where that landscape was going to be located. And I think that, to me, that would kind of hit the bare minimum of what the site plan would cover.
As well as the materials of the.
And as far as telling the landscape architect or the engineer,
Yeah.
I would say they need the information that if you were to hand this off to a builder, that he would know what to do without you standing there next to him the whole
Yeah.
time.
Or someone to price
So-
it.
100%.
Or at least, at the very
Yeah.
least, someone that would be able to price the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%, I agree with that. So one of the factors of working with, for instance, Ace Hardware will order the tank and they'll install the materials. So they're not thinking
Yeah.
in terms of we need a contractor to do it, because my question immediately was, who's your contractor, and have them draw the plans. That's a simple do for me. That would be the same as if somebody came to me and said, I need you to get a permit for my house. Who's your contractor and where's his plans? That's it. In this case, they said, oh, we'll just get Dean to do it, and this is what we have. And that's fine, it's fine,
Yeah.
but we need to get a little more detail apparently. And then,
And just for your note, when you are comparing the plan that you receive from your engineer, the last time that we had this discussion, the approved plans for the site were not what was shown on the layout plan that you brought. And I don't specifically remember what that was, but I do remember bringing it to your attention at that point, because we had the approved plans for that discussion. I had Tim pull them just to make sure that we had an understanding of what was actually there.
okay.
So I had hoped that we would also have, if not the approved layout plan, some acknowledgement of what this is the current site conditions and this is confirmed to be what's going on, and this is where all the things are. And I don't remember if it had something to do with the location of the fence or the location of the outdoor storage, or maybe it was columns along the building or access from that. I can't recall exactly what it was
I think
specifically.
it was outdoor storage.
The outdoor storage, I think, now that where they have it on a little bit of lawn and garden allowable outdoor display right there in front of the parking, just to the west of the tank, I think is what one of the conversations we had, but I don't recall the detail of that,
Yeah.
and I'll just take a look at that.
Yeah, just as a note for you, because that I just recall that being one of the things that we talked about last time.
So Kelly, Chairman, my question for you is, the approved plans that were already done, it would be helpful if we would have them in this packet when we're
Agreed.
reviewing.
I've asked for that every time we have
Yeah.
a project that's coming back, to have the approved set of plans included.
And I guess for the applicant's sake, it's always better to give us more information, almost too much information in a way. Some of these things we get 200 pages and it's we have to decipher, but not having enough also makes it difficult as the design review board, to not have the full design intent available to review.
So, just for clarity, because you are talking about the approved plans, I would assume that I would get well, first of all, I would assume that the engineer who did the plans would know which ones were approved.
Yes.
So, but that being said, if I will get the approved set of plans to take a look at and see if these are accurate, and then we can certainly submit the site plan that has the stamped approved set, so you see that. Do you need the full set or just the one?
No, I think just the layout plan
Okay.
Would be appropriate,
Okay.
because we're not looking at anything else from a three-dimensional standpoint. We don't
Yeah.
need building plans. We don't need anything like that. So just the approved site layout plan.
All right, so let me ask a question before I get too far along, because I'm positive the client will ask this. We were asked to come back and show some kind of landscaping. We also had a fence, but the objective here was put some kind of landscaping around it because people coming from Publix may see something. You're saying if you're gonna do it, great. If you're not gonna do it, that's okay too. I would really like some, if we don't need landscaping, we may just come back with the appropriate type of, I need to know what you need.
Right,
To make
so
it.
there's no code requirement for you to put landscape in front of that fence.
Right, and I think my statement last time was, I'm not sure it would be the greatest idea to have landscaping around a tank, but because it's a tank, you know?
Well, I thought outside of the fence,
Yeah.
we need to line the
Acceptable.
fence. Yeah, I just, like Chad said, I think we need to match the fence style that's there, the aluminum black picket, and
Yeah.
just line it with a hedge on the outside. I mean, that's
Okay.
all I would be asking for.
Okay,
I'd agree with that.
And then just have your landscape architect put a plant type in there.
I mean, that,
just so
if
it's gonna
you're
be
gonna, if you're
native-
gonna propose it, if you're gonna propose landscaping, it'd be nice to know what it is.
pick a plant.
Pick a
Yeah,
plant.
and the code will tell you. They just choose one from the list.
Okay.
There's not too many natives on that list.
Oh, I know.
There are not, yet another
Yeah.
comment that I have about
Yeah, they're not. But the plants on that list are readily available in the trade-off.
palm trees, but I don't recommend them either.
Oh, they're not native here.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Palm trees
Yeah.
are readily available
Yeah.
everywhere, but no,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you did not get additional direction or better direction on your submittal, and that all of the submittal documents didn't make it to us.
Well, as things progress and we clean up the code and you guys get a little more stuff done as you're working, I think it'll improve our systems. It'll improve us who have to come in here with these applications. I regret that the only thing that the comment that kept coming back to me was about a building plan for a tank instead of all the other things that, you know, we talked about. So I'll take this information back and we'll discuss it. You know.
I think that the intention is anything new that you are adding to the grass area, any improvements, any changes, whatever you're doing, we just need
Correct.
to know what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway. I think we can work through the rest of that.
Okay.
So,
I get frustrated. I mean, they've got to make these decisions anyway.
Yeah. Your engineer should.
Yeah, I won't, I mean, yes, I understand,
No.
and yes,
They
but
know
this is,
ISR is a thing too.
there are other factors. I will not say that it's you guys that are frustrating the client. There are other factors, and this is just another type of one of those factors, is that we could do a little bit better getting information across. I get it, I understand, I've done site plan review, I know what you're typically looking for, but I could tell you that with a tank, just like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever had to deal with. And I've dealt with some weird stuff. I'm not,
it's like, surely this is not
some of you
the
know.
weirdest thing that you've had to
This is the weirdest thing because of the style. I think it's because, sadly, I'm gonna go ahead and throw this out there. I'm old enough to remember when it was a letter and a picture and you got an approval and addendum to your DO. So I'm sorry, but that is like, I was like, this is so crazy. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
So I guess we probably should make official act motion and to continue to the.
Oh, yes, please continue just to the very next
Yes,
meeting.
what is that date? July 8th?
So moved.
Yeah, whatever day it is.
All right, so we have
Second,
second. All in favor?
Aye.
David.
All right.
We're gonna miss the opportunity to do propane for 4th of July. This is gonna go well.
Sorry. So coming back to Inlet Beach, I'm assuming we don't have, does he have the required drawing?
Like that you have.
Is he bringing a material board and elevations?
He said like he's sending material board to Mr. Tim Brown.
Okay, so at that point, I think we need to go ahead and and bump it, if he doesn't have things in hand for us to even talk
I
about.
think he has something that he can
I'm not
show
gonna give
you.
feedback.
I mean, it's 5 o'clock. This is all information we should have had ahead. I'll defer to the rest of you, but my preference is to kick it to next month.
I agree.
I agree too, because I know we're not gonna have field drawings to look at, and that's canopies, and canopies can be 100 different colors too, so.
So, direction. Yeah, we expect all of the architectural drawings, color, and material samples board.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All
For a
right.
major, we really would like a physical board, physical samples.
Yes,
provided.
he did the physical board. I have a picture of the physical board, but he say like he sent the physical board to here to the office of Tim Brown. He's here, so.
I mean, it's still not going to have drawings, and
And we haven't had a chance to review them.
we haven't had a chance to review it either. So, welcome.
My apologies.
Yeah, we were just expressing that for next month, we would like to make sure that we have all of the architectural elevations of the building and the canopies in color, and a material sample board submitted.
So that was all sent to Mr. Brown. We were instructed to fax it to him. He should have his concern was the color. So I did bring some Moncel colors y'all are going to require.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that you have to accept that. I'm just asking, that's what he's already got everything. So I'm not sure.
Well, we didn't have, we don't have color architectural elevations or black and white or color elevations of the canopies or any of that. And we typically have a photograph of the board in here, and then the actual physical board in front of us, which we don't have either of those.
Right, which is kind of odd. So do we know what happened with Brown?
I know that he is out. I don't know if there's a board received. If you want to.
From Marietta, Georgia. It just arrived. So if Mr. Brown is not going to be, is he going to be around tomorrow morning?
You'd have to ask staff. I don't know any of that information.
So, all right. So we're going to come back down next month at the same time?
Yes.
He's got everything he didn't give anything to anybody, huh?
So even if we had the material board, that we still don't have drawings of the canopy or color elevations of the building in here.
I have that's all been sent to Tim Brown.
Okay, so what we have does not include anything for canopies. So there were probably 200 pages or whatever, and none of that information was in there. So I don't know if you want to look at what was uploaded online and just vet that for next month.
Yeah,
But
no, I did.
Okay.
I'm concerned that if again, we've given him everything he needed, and then for him not to be here, regardless of being sick, not passing on information.
so you submitted canopy drawings and full color elevations?
Yeah, renderings. We submitted 2 sets of renderings. Made like ungodly amounts of elevations. Can you show me what you
Yeah, absolutely. Come on up, yeah. So that's what we have right here.
It almost looked like
Right?
they scanned
But it's not
the
grayscale,
one
'cause that's
set
in red.
twice
So
into our package.
Okay.
'Cause we appear to have like a duplicate when we were going through.
Okay. Yeah, these are all so this is a shell drawing that we submitted independently. But there's gonna be a Sonic there. Well, so I guess while we're here, I need to probably report back to Sonic how, because their signage is like yellow.
So we will have to get this conversation all on the recording. But for signage, if we are approving signage in the packet, we cannot dictate the color or content of your signage. We can on the surrounding, if it's the monument sign or the surrounding element, if you've got it mounted onto something. But the actual content and color of the sign is not something that we can hand.
Okay. So if like their letters fit within the maximum height, they can be their color. If they try to do a color backboard, that is also that's a bold color, then that would be the governing height. Does that make sense?
Because we put that on our elevation. I see that you don't have.
And see, we didn't have signage yet. We asked earlier if signage was supposed to be included.
So,
in
yeah,
that.
we assumed it was not, so that.
We don't handle signage or the monument sign, and we don't handle the canopy itself. I can get that information. That's not an issue.
Okay. So that, all of that information should be part of our submittal package, because we don't care who the applicant is compared to who all you're getting. Okay, so, yeah, thank you. You can just leave it right there.
May I get these 8 colors confirmed at least? Like, just
So without them being kind of on the elevation, I mean, if they're the Munsell colors, then it's going to be very likely that elevation will be approved.
As long as I have look, I'll come back down next month. This has been the biggest pain in the rear end, and I'm glad this is being recorded. This has been the biggest pain in the rear end.
Yeah, you're not getting picked up. So
If you step back here, if you step back there, you'll get recorded.
Well, here's the deal. These Munsell colors was super challenging. Like, nobody makes this.
right.
So we went to Sherwin-Williams, and they were able to color match it as close as humanly possible.
Right, and that's all we expect of you. It's just the Munsell colors are defensible in court, and so that's part of our standard that we can.
Correct. So if you basically we usually have the applicant will just paint a sample. So Tim can hold it next to the Munsell and see if it's a pretty close match.
So
And
he has the whole material board.
Because we're aware that the Munsell color book costs thousands of dollars, so people aren't
And there's
buying
one copy, and nobody else wants to buy it. We get that.
Is there some sort of jurisdiction we can write a letter to? And be like, hey guys, it's not exactly the best thing for you to use.
Well, it is a defensible in court thing for us to use, whereas some of the other options that we have discussed in the past are not.
Understood.
So I apologize that you drove in from Georgia for that.
No, it's fine. There's the material board that's.
Well, we can look at.
Want to just look at the.
We're happy to provide feedback.
I know we're gonna come back.
Yeah.
It's okay. As long as I don't have to do this again. Thank you very much. This is not exactly the pride and joy that I had approximately 12 hours to put this together.
And if you don't mind, when you get up to the microphone, if you'll just make sure your name gets listed in for our record. Yeah, and that's fine.
So, again, forgive me for the appearance of this. This is a very quick and down and dirty material board.
And that's fine. This is all we expect.
Okay.
Is just to be able to understand. Yeah.
My name is Nate Warner. Loring Design Group.
Yeah, we can kind of go back and forth between your color elevations and your material samples, and that's an easy kind of discussion for us.
Okay.
So it doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to have.
No, it's
so
not.
It works.
So
if
you
you'll.
got EFIS with the Munsell white color, EFIS with the Munsell darker black color. I don't know which one. I got it listed here, and it's just got brick, painted brick. That's the whole building. 4-sided parapets, all covering the rooftop units. Nothing extravagant. Colors work.
Sorry that we'll.
Wait to see you guys next month. I just want you to know.
I'm sure. So if someone wants to make an official deferral to our July 8th meeting, you have
Some other different than color. I'm going to go back to the site for a second. if that's okay.
absolutely. If you'd
Okay.
like to.
So, just because the next item on the agenda is the design standards, under section 1, authority, purposes, and intent, there's paragraph A, intent. It says the specific interest of the standards lies in limiting the quantity of curb cuts, encouraging the use of cross-access corridors and joint-use driveways to increase safe access to commercial entities, retaining natural vegetation when at all possible, establishing a lush vegetative street canopy, creating and preserving green space between developments, encouraging safe pedestrian and vehicular travel along the corridors, encouraging parking in side and rear areas, limiting the number and size of signs, and maintain the natural beauty of the area. And then we've got some new language we're going to be proposing, which is not relevant today. But so, and I know I was not on the board when the site plan first came to this board.
We haven't seen the site plan.
This is the first time
This
we've
is
seen it.
this,
Okay.
yeah, this is the first time.
Okay, so I guess the reference to it coming before another body was to the TRC earlier today.
Yesterday,
Okay.
yeah.
So I guess I have a big question. This is a lot of activity on a small site. If the site was bigger, a lot of things might be different. But I'm just a little shocked that the vehicular and pedestrian connections that existed current form of the property are being completely eliminated. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. We're getting less compliant with the code significantly.
What are you saying is being eliminated?
The driveway connection on the south side of the property behind the Shades Restaurant.
I don't think that was that was just gravel. That was,
Their survey.
it's
Formal enough that it's presented in their existing site plan. So I'm not, I just got to understand, and the addition of the restaurant use inside of it, I mean, it's more stuff going on the site than there was currently. I think something new would be a huge improvement. So I don't want to sound like I'm saying that I think that this project, I'm shocked that when I read that first paragraph, I mean, this is the first paragraph of our design. Well, what's there is attractive and definitely doesn't. New site plan is a pretty significant departure from what I just read.
I will say that I think there may be some competing interests between what Public Works is looking at as far as right-of-way protection and just transportation, ingress, egress, and then what the scenic corridor standards may be clearly leaning into. And I can't speak to the gravel access in the rear. I'm not familiar with that particular component, but I will say that that Public Works was insistent that the 98 access was removed as part of their review. So
that's what I mean, I can see why Public Works would want that removed, but from living and working in that area, I worked there for 20 years, people are not going to know to turn down 38, to turn into Shades to get to a gas station. So that what we're going to end up doing is pushing all of that onto South Wall Street, which I don't think is
right. And that was the comment that necessitated the tabling and some second look at how we're looking at the access there, but both from a vehicular and pedestrian standpoint.
And then the just a quick question: the right out, the forced right out, is that striped on the ground or is that a raised curb forced right out?
That I don't know.
Because I can tell exactly what will happen is the CVS in Panama City Beach, when you turn down, every single person, I'll admit it, I've done it every time I've gone there. I turn left in the right in only. Everyone does.
Well, it happens across the street here, across 20 into the shopping center. That's the Pizza Hut and the nail salon.
Oh yeah.
Everyone turns left there.
And I suspect if it's a soft curb, it's not going to deter too many people either. But
the fire truck access is shown as crossing over it, so I'm assuming it's
just a stripe. Some people, because I mean, yeah, people are going to want to get to 98 the most efficient route. I wouldn't force them into the neighborhood as well. I mean,
right, and that was the main concern that really pushed pause on it, was that's exactly what's going to happen. So,
okay,
all right.
Thank you. Any additional feedback before we make official action?
Well, I really had more of a general comment that I want to try to put a couple concise, there's three thoughts I'm going to try to express. One is, we're happy to see the property being renovated. Second, access to this site is already pretty crazy, to use a and my third thought is, and the reason I mentioned the Sonic is that the fact that we've got those two conditions, one's a good thing, one's a not so good thing. One's the good thing's renovated, not so good thing is that the site access is already pretty difficult. The fact that an additional use added to the property doesn't seem to be helping. There's not going to be any understood. Yeah. It's just a walk-up. I didn't want you to think that we were going to be filled parking. Yeah. No. And I counted. There's 32 spaces on the site, and there's 32 spaces now. So all that type of stuff. But really, to build off of Mr. Hample's comments, living and working and being around this site, it's challenging. I think as the operator of the business, you don't want a business that is very difficult to get in and get out of and has a history of accidents or whatever happens. And I'm just, again, this board is not into the particular issues on 98, et cetera. But as I just read, this board is tasked with the interconnectivity of sites, pedestrian activities, that type of stuff. It looks pretty challenging. It's going to be a much prettier site, but I'm not sure it's going to be a better site because of the functionally, which is the purview of this board. I got to deal with colors. You got to deal with. Anyway, that was
okay.
So with that, I'm glad to make a motion unless anyone else has a comment.
No, please go ahead.
I move we continue this to the
July
8th DRB meeting.
I'll second.
Yep.
Oh.
She got it.
All right, got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you, guys. I do apologize. I really appreciate you accommodating.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank Please leave it with Stephen. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is 5:20. Hopefully we can be brief on this one. If not, we can talk through maybe something for next month. But in your packet, you should have had a draft version of the code that we have been working on. So for everyone that's news purpose, I think, Ashley, you got to come to one of our special sessions, but we had 3 special sessions and several discussions during regular board to update some of the things in the code to help it make it read a little bit clearer to what our intentions were and some of the things that we're commonly seeing as deviation requests that we went ahead and tried to capture some of those. So this was kind of the culmination of that. It had the process from this standpoint is once we agree that this is what we would like to have staff move forward with, they will then start taking it through the process with Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners to have this adopted into our code. That may or may not involve additional public meetings. I think that's up to staff, but if we didn't capture something or if there's still some ambiguity, and I think based off our last discussion, I already found some ambiguity because we talk a lot about elevations but don't specifically call out, hey, we actually need a site plan. So that might be the first thing that I think we should make sure is included is what all we would expect to see on an actual layout site plan. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to read that or have a question. And I see Lee is here. If you have comments, Lee, if you'd like to come up and give us your thoughts. Stephen, I don't know, did you have something that you wanted to talk
I
through?
was just making myself available, but
You got to sit through one of our special meetings also.
I
So-
did. I did.
I don't know if you've had a chance to read through, if you had any thoughts or concerns. I know that some of the things that I kind of hoped we would have a little bit more clarity on, I mean, they're just kind of still as they are.
Yeah, anything that you would like staff to spend some additional time on, just let me know, and I'll ensure that it does.
Well, I think the biggest thing I think for the submittal, it's on page 30 of 32, where it starts talking about our submittal requirements. Site plans as applicable, we should probably list out that's all hardscape improvements, all landscape improvements, site lighting. I mean, we have in chapter 1 a pretty thorough list of what you would expect a site plan to entail. And not to be flippant, but a civil engineer knows exactly what that entails. So.
And I almost disagree with trying to be more prescriptive on a site plan. I mean, as a design of, like someone who does this for a job, I mean, David, you design professionals know what you have to submit.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's
A complete, like I said, a set of plans that if you gave it to someone else, they know what to do without you standing over their shoulder.
I think that what the trouble we run into is that the nature of our board and the types of things we would review wouldn't necessarily have items that are submitted by professionals. So like case in point, the skippers, seafood, the signs that they came in with, that was a business owner bringing his business signs that they were making. And they didn't have professional drawings. We were able to talk through some of the questions and professional materials. That wasn't a site layout plan, but I could see easily the tank submittal coming in from, you know, the franchise owner of ACE and not kind of going through the civil engineer. So I think that giving some parameters that, and if it's only saying, you know, all of the items from a site plan that are listed in chapter 1, you know, maybe that's what it says. But we kind of give that list of elevations, roof plans, you know, so it might be helpful to make sure that all hardscape improvements, all landscape improvements, all.
Some language to the effect of shall be sufficient to evaluate.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Absolutely.
was, yeah.
It's kind of a catch-all. I mean, we could elaborate a little bit more, but I think just like the content of the standards, we fall down the rabbit hole of getting very specific about you shall have this at this
Right.
scale and this at that scale.
Yeah, I don't think that that's necessary at all, but I think,
You know,
yeah.
we need to be able to evaluate the completed project. The drawings need to be sufficient, and so pick on the tank. All of these things that we ask, they're gonna have to decide at some point, whoever. Maybe they won't decide, and that's exactly the problem. They'll just.
Yeah.
But I think that, I mean, that ultimately is we have to be able to evaluate what the completed project is.
Well, we all know that somebody's going to bid that out, right? Whether it's going to be the guy that's installing the tank or the guy that's going to install the fence, and he's going to have something, a contract drawing to say X number.
Yeah,
of
coming
linear
from a
feet.
construction
Yeah.
background, what I saw today, I can't bid that.
No, I mean, you're going to
I-
want to know
We
what kind
need to
the
have
size
materials
of the concrete
listed.
pad.
Like, I need to know how deep this is.
I mean-
How thick are we? Like, what are we? What
Yeah,
are we
I mean,
doing? Where's
it,
my limits on it?
at the very, I
I
mean, the very least, the limits of that hardscape, you
Yeah.
know.
At least give me a square footage of what I'm building.
And had the tank been installed as part of the original project, all that information would have likely been in place.
Well,
You would hope, yeah. I mean,
yeah, but it's also like, it's one of these anomalies, and that's what I was pointing out to her, that pops up once in a blue moon. This is an oversized tank. This is the first one over there. There's going to be all these questions. So honestly, for us to receive, even though we didn't get it in our packet here, what she brought today still is not clear for a DRB to give an approval
And I think the
on.
dumpster analysis was great because that's exactly what we're talking about. I mean, if you're making any improvement to a site, that has to have some sort of approval, you're bringing that in with all of the elements that you're building, all of the access to it, and
this is a dumpster that can explode at any given moment. So I'd like to know how people are going to be moving around it.
Most of the dumpsters
Like
around here
where-
do explode on a regular
I
basis.
mean, yeah.
But, yeah, no, and as I mentioned, the lighting during the part of the year that it's dark, you know, by 5 o'clock, there's going to
Well,
be
safety
lighting.
is a
It's
big
probably required, just
concern.
like the bollards.
Yeah.
It's going to have to be well lit, and so we need to know what that is. They needed to come back anyway.
yeah, it is unfortunate that we didn't have something to point to as a direct list, but I think that even if that notwithstanding, knowing that you're making a submittal, and in chapter 1 it says, hey, if you're making any kind of submittal, these are the things, you know, I think that falls on the engineer that submitted it, and that was a disservice to.
And that stuff should come out in a pre-app meeting as well.
Yes.
I
yes.
mean, like you got to have a site plan. I mean, and it's showing the relationship of where it's at.
And especially
To
since we
existing
talked
conditions.
about all that stuff
I mean, to
exhaustively
me,
when
it
it came
should just
through.
be a given. I mean, it's not.
So Kelly, on
Wouldn't be
page
that hard.
28, printed page 30 of the PDF,
Yes.
you were looking into maybe the B paragraph submittals.
Yeah, just
Should we
expanding a little
place
bit.
materials in there, like clarification of materials and materials boards should be, I mean, you know, because submittals
Mm-hmm.
for us where we are, that's really what we.
Yeah, and
I'd like to really see, it could be in the introductory paragraph, you know, just directly under paragraph B. Somewhere in there, it should say sufficient for the board to evaluate the finished or completed project.
The design intent.
Yeah.
To, like,
and you know, if site plans is applicable enough, I mean, you're right. Anybody should be able to evaluate a site plan needs these things.
Yeah.
So I mean, it boggles a little bit.
The burden is on the applicant to present enough information that we can evaluate
Yeah.
the standards that
Yeah, I would agree. Most of the changes here were not the only change that I think is substantial is that we had an entire paragraph about outdoor storage. And we battle with outdoor storage. And one of the requirements of the outdoor storage was that every year, if you had outdoor storage approved, that you came and got a permit for that. And last year, I think 1 or 2 people came and got a permit. And we have hundreds of those.
and that starts on page 3, section 6.
Yeah, that's at the very,
paragraph
very,
D.
very beginning.
It goes all the way
And
through
we
that whole
basically
section. Yeah.
struck through that and
Yep.
said, you know, we're not going to deal with this anymore.
Yeah.
If
So-
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I do want some clarity if I could, because
Yeah.
that subsection there speaks to the corridor buffer area. So,
That particular section.
right, that subsection D under 611.1. So I think if we're after prohibiting outdoor storage on the site, we may need to,
So where do you see that it's
under the first sentence, the end of the first sentence, it says within the scenic corridor buffer area. So that's the first 25 feet, if I'm not mistaken, of the site. So if we're talking about the site,
where are you reading
Where
from?
are you,
Stan?
yeah.
subsection D, 611.1.
611D. Okay.
yeah.
There's no outdoor storage.
Oh, the corridor. buffer
Oh,
area,
okay.
No,
Right,
hang
if
on,
that's the
wait,
intent here.
Time out. The first sentence says there shall be nothing in the buffer area. The
Yeah.
second sentence says that anywhere on the site, it cannot be viewed from US 98 or 331. My understanding of those two sentences.
Sure, but you could see, I mean, just right now, you can see there could be some confusion. So I just want to make sure that we're treating this appropriately.
So yeah, so we are not talking about, so this, we are saying you're not going to put any outdoor storage in that buffer area, the 25 feet, but also anything you have outside of your building does need to be screened from view.
Okay.
And I think that there will be exception to that, especially as we're talking about gas stations and some of the things that they have outside, especially as we're talking about propane storage, propane tanks. At the Walmart in Dune Lakes, for example, we asked them to put that to the side of the building so that it wasn't on the front facade. And I think that those are the types of things that are totally fine. The problem was that the text here was so cumbersome.
Oh, yeah.
And code had a hard time enforcing it. They didn't enforce it. They didn't even acknowledge that it existed anymore. And there was no ramification for people putting out everything they wanted to put out in front of the store. So this way, it kind of really cleans it up. And if you want to bring forth a site plan that shows some outdoor storage, that has to be screened from view or part of a deviation or, you know, very limited defined thing. And I think that that was the intent of it. And 2 years ago, when we started this conversation, we had support from planning leadership. And now that we are changing the mantle, that may be a very difficult conversation for new planning leadership to take to the board, because I think that's probably going to be our bone of contention in this.
Are you talking about specifically about the outdoor storage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's the big, to me, everything else in here is cleaning up language and giving a little more specificity to some of the things, trying to be a little bit more intentional with our interpretation so that we can more easily be consistent for all the projects that we review. That I think was the intention of the rest of it. So if you felt differently, or if you want to go further with anything or make other suggestions, this is kind of what we came up with.
I think just to my original point, if there's not an issue with you all, if I create a subsection E and start that with open or covered storage, so it's two really separate ideas.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Anything that helps the clarity of that is great. And I think that the nature of what we do, being open to the deviations, because we acknowledge that all the sites are unique and that's not, we have a very different burden than like BZA has, right? So
right.
Our burden is much more of a, hey, does this make sense? Is this within our aesthetic keeping? Does this basically satisfy the intents of what we're trying to do? And I think that hopefully is not cumbersome to our applicants to have those deviations, because that's something that we expect.
Is there deviations, and forgive me, is there a deviation section?
I think there is. It may
We
not.
have exceptions to this
Exceptions.
to this specific topic under number 2 under D. So if you wanted to separate that out and do deviations and exceptions under a different paragraph, I guess you could.
Well, no, I mean, I think if we're talking about deviations to the
code,
storage
yeah.
or to that in particular, maybe we could
I
just
don't know
refer
exactly.
to this section.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where it is, but you know, that's the method that you use if you want a different color scheme. That's the method that you use if you want to attempt a mural. If you want additional signage, if you want 15 donuts on your facade.
Yeah, I'm not
Monument
seeing
sign.
a deviation section called out, but I am just very briefly scanning it, so.
Yeah, it should be in there. I feel like it's in there. If not, that might be something that you might want to take a look at to refine further.
And that was my thought, is just making sure that it's clear that,
Yeah.
that if you're going to seek a deviation, you can deviate from XYZ only, and this is how you do it.
I
If
don't
it's not
think that we
spelled
have.
out.
I don't think we have anything in the code that says you can't ask for a deviation from these things. I think that
Other than the prohibition language, right? If it's prohibited, you can't
right.
deviate
If it's
from it.
prohibited, you
Okay.
can't do it. But I think that everything else. I don't think that there's very much that falls into that
It's just
prohibited
kind of a
category.
blanket statement somewhere in here that if you need a deviation, you can apply for one. Is
It-
that?
You'll have to forgive me. I think that there is a blanket statement, but I think it's mentioned a couple times. But you might want to clarify that.
I'll dig in and make
Yeah.
sure that that's the case.
Um,
I've just been separated from this
Oh,
work,
yeah,
so-
absolutely. And I don't think, there weren't very many changes proposed on the colors or the types of facades. I think we added black as an accent and bronze maybe as for awnings or windows or something that is something that we kept seeing. And we were consistently approving that because it made sense. So I think that was really the big piece there. For signage, we had talked a lot about the gradation of signage for small frontage, small scale properties to larger scale properties. And I believe that signage should kind of reflect, if you have a very small frontage and a very small singular building, you have a smaller sign than a property that has 400 or 500 feet or is a complex. I didn't put too much restriction on that size of monument sign because I know we do have some strong opinions about monument signs. But I think it does suggest that unless you have a certain size frontage or something, that you are dropping from 10 feet down to 8 feet. But that was really, the intention was to say, if you're changing facade colors, if you're modifying, that has to come back to us unless it's just a typical maintenance sort of situation. That we don't want to do anything to prohibit you from maintaining your property. If you've got, a gray building and you're painting it back gray, fantastic. But if you're going to change how that color scheme works, it has to come. And I think that was a little potentially ambiguous previously, and so I think the language cleaned up a little bit for that. So I've talked a lot. Does anyone else have anything that they wanted to touch on? Or Lee, do you want to join the conversation? Please join the conversation. Hey.
Lee Moore, Moore, in case you don't remember. Hey.
Hi.
See y'all. I've got a few things that are just more like typographical issues. Do you want me to get with Stephen later, or do you want me to go through that now? I don't have a ton of stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, what's your preference?
Absolutely. If you want to send them to me, or no, I mean, if
later.
it's
Okay.
just editorial
Okay.
type stuff, let's get together later.
So the substantive stuff, starting with murals. Surprise, surprise. I noticed there is some added language, and when we say on a case-by-case basis, it will be considered as an exception. Is that the same thing as a deviation?
Yeah, I think
I was
so.
gonna
We might want to make that clear.
language consistent.
I just circled it. I'll make sure it's in line with the rest of it.
Of a glossary.
I think we have to, should we prescribe what we expect to see presented? Because I want to see an example, obviously, we don't want someone saying, oh, I'm hiring this person to, we want to see that mural to scale on that building.
I think that's part of,
Very much so.
I mean, when you're asking for a facade right now, you have to bring that facade, you have to bring exactly where those colors go on that building.
Yep.
So I don't see any difference in the submittal requirement if you're bringing forth a mural. You see, we would see a color rendering of that mural on that building, on that facade, exactly what
I think
it's
we should
proposed.
say that though, because someone's just going to bring, I'm painting this and it's going here. I mean, that's what they're going to give
Okay.
us.
If
we
they even
don't.
say I'm painting this, they might not even give you that.
Correct.
Because it's just like signage. They all want to do it after they've gotten the approval for the rest of the project. You're going to have the same thing with murals. And if they're going to do a mural, in my opinion, it needs to be part of the overall design of the project.
I would agree
If
with
it is
that.
a mural considered a sign?
So we specifically have language in here that says you cannot use a mural as a sign.
It's an official sign. Like a
I would
wayfinding
say
You
sign.
cannot use it for advertising. Like the
Correct.
language,
Advertising
Yeah,
is what
the
it
la-
says.
the
I
language
get more
says advertising.
specific
Okay.
than advertising.
but a sign has parameters for size.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do whatever you want in your sign parameters. In your little 100 square feet, you have free reign.
Yeah.
And I think that if you want to utilize that, that's your choice. If you're going to be painting the side of a building, that's a facade change, and you bring it through, and it's not going to reflect any advertising at all.
Can you
Including
tell me
the
what
name.
page you're on with murals?
I
12 of 32,
Oh, 10 in mine.
And
or 10.
And this
Which
is,
one- which
this
printed
is
packet
the,
is 10.
yeah, this is the biggest example that I want to honestly, truly talk about instead of talking snarky about the donuts. The big concern here is Alvin's Island and Surf Shop.
Yeah.
And they have these huge lifestyle images. Okay, so it's not technically advertising. It's not necessarily showing a brand. Sometimes it is. But that's something that if you're going to be painting a lifestyle mural on the side of your building, you need to bring all of that to us. We have to be able to say yes or no on that, because I think that that's not necessarily art. And public art, I think that is a billboard. And
Okay.
I think there's a line that if you're bringing it through as a sign, we have parameters for that. If you're bringing it through as a mural and a facade change, we should be able to evaluate that.
So on a mural basis, you'd like to see the percentage of the paint of the mural be congruent with the percentage of the entire facade, so it's not overwhelming. So it's not,
So I think that it depends on what you're doing, and I don't think that it has to have a percentage.
It
Like,
could be a whole
art.
parapet
yeah,
on the side of a building.
if you're talking like Seaside has the whole big purple, thing, I consider all of that a mural. The whole side of that building is painted.
the
as
murals
part
are,
of that.
they're subjective on a case-by-case basis. then,
Absolutely, I
essentially.
think.
So-
That's not reflective of advertising.
Yeah.
Doesn't have any text or words in it that's trying to designate something in that way. It would be a facade change. And so we would review it as, is this appropriate for its location? Is this appropriate for,
I just
what it's
think
going.
the only part of the sentence that is ambiguous to me is that shall not be used to attract attention, because that's what art inevitably attracts attention. So,
I think it needs to go back to more, it has to be a piece of public art and in no way, an advertisement
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of our signs are attracting attention. They're labeling kind of where we're going. But the overwhelming
attract attention for sales purposes.
for sales purposes, and overwhelming in the code, we talk about that not attracting attention. So we have our lighting for our signs is restricted. We don't have neon signs. We don't have the parapet neon signs. We're specific about where we have our up lighting on our buildings or down lightings. And so I think, we already utilize that phrase, not to attract attention, because we're not trying to create a situation where we have competing attention-grabbing facades. We're not driving down Panama City where we've got all kinds of stuff out.
I think it goes back to that paragraph that I read, that what we're trying not to compete with is the natural beauty of this area. Ultimately, our entire code is an attempt to try to preserve the natural beauty of this area.
Right.
That's a pretty big challenge on Highway 98.
Yeah.
And I I agree.
So a mural, and why it can be subjective, and one of my opinions is that, and I don't know whether this iteration of the code is the right time to do it, or if we need to engage in some conversation. Arts Alliance.
Cultural Arts
Cultural
Alliance,
Arts
yeah.
And I don't know whether we code, or if we just know that we can do that. But if the standard with the murals is the same as with everything else, that if the mural enhances and is not, then it's not. But commercial signage, I get the intent. I agree the language might need to be tweaked a little bit, but in my opinion, at the point that something is overly, hey, look at me, come buy this, that is competing with the.
That's the difference in art and advertising.
Yeah.
though.
Yes.
Art and advertising can be the same, or they cannot be the
Yeah,
same.
yeah.
Well,
And our
all in one
standard has to
thing.
do
So-
with the natural beauty.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
Yeah.
that should be, this is on a subjective basis, case by case.
No.
The first time I came to one of these meetings, I met with Mac before we started, and he said, Jonathan, this is the only board where he's like, it is a subjective board. He says there is a a prescriptive code here, but he says most of what you guys are reviewing, this is the only board where most of it is very subjective. He says, and I need you to know that you have the ability to vote something down if you don't like it. He's like, that's what this board is for. He's like, that's why this board was created. So what's going to happen? It's going to happen. We're going to approve one mural, and then the next person's going to be mad because we didn't approve theirs, but it's going to happen. So I think if that's written in there that this is, if you want to do a mural, know going into it that this is a subjective review. It'll be reviewed for, like we said, is it given back to the community? Is it public art or is it advertised? All of those things. I think it needs to be written so people don't think, well, they got one, I'm doing one.
Are they submitting for a separate permit for these murals?
It would be a deviation to the facade. So if they're coming in with, and they want to use a different green color on their building, they have that same deviation. It's the exact same track that goes on, but it's a separate notice that goes out in the mail. So like it would be a separate advertised item. But all of our deviations are separate advertised items.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't
I
be.
just wonder if you could cure that by just having it be its own permit. I mean, I hate to add more permit process to this county, but like if you're going to have more and more of these things, can't you treat it like a sign?
No.
No, it is not
From
a
a
sign,
permit
but
perspective.
from a permit perspective, can't you treat it like signage?
Well, so from
have it go through.
From a
So we're not reviewing the mural with the whole thing. We might review the mural as just a part of the building.
But it would still have to be a deviation
It'd
because there's no way to
still be a
prescribe.
deviation, and it would still be a facade. Like if somebody wanted to come in and change the color of their building, they're still coming in with that same application. So it's still part of that process. It can happen when it comes in as a brand new project. It can happen 10 years later.
I mean,
The
you don't only
name of
address
the-
it in the code to say that murals are not a standard facade, right, of a building and are treated.
Well, we
as a
already
separate
say that because you
entity.
can only have 3 colors on your building. So if you're doing more than 3 colors, you're coming to ask us about it. And I think that there's nothing in here that says we don't want art. There's nothing in here that says we don't want unique character. There is not language that defines what art is, but there's language that defines what advertising is and what parameters you can have for that. In my opinion, murals that are art are something you can kind of interact with. It's pedestrian in scale. It's something you can view from a walking standpoint. It's something that you might be
driving.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I think that starts to go into a billboard situation because you have to remember 98 is a highway. 30A is 15 miles an hour or 20 miles an hour or golf cart speeds. And so your experience of driving past a building that's painted on 30A is different than your experience driving past it at 98 at 60 miles an hour. And
When
at
you're
that
lucky
point,
to go
And
60
danger-
miles an hour,
that
but
brings up danger
That's why I
issues.
bring up the vehicular
Safety
thing
issues.
because if we're not. So, like for instance, the donut place, right? Like where you see, I can still see it when I'm driving, and honestly, it is a little distracting because every time I look over, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Oh, look at the road. Okay,
but it's
like,
not.
don't-
It's not
and
about just
billboards are
them.
truly up high purposes advertising, right? Whereas a mural is supposed to be interactive. So
And that is fine. If we could just say, oh, it's just the yes, and
Yes,
on the
thank
inside,
you.
it
I
should
wouldn't-
not be along the
I
corridor.
would have
It should
probably
be-
had no problem with them. Well, first they didn't come and ask, but if they had wanted to have this discussion on the inside where
Yeah.
it's interactable, where it's facing that apartment complex all day long, we were going
Or on the inside parking, like not on the facade of the street, whether that be south or north, whatever
Yes.
side of your building it is, not
And
on the corridor side.
You know, we had this discussion. We had a hotel come through for
Moxie Grand Boulevard.
Moxie Grand Boulevard, and their initial proposal was that they wanted to have a mural on the Grand Boulevard side. They got a little shy about it because Tim kept saying no murals. We don't really want to talk about murals, and I'm like, oh, but facade change on that would be fantastic on Grand Boulevard. And so when they came back, I had all kinds of stuff ready to talk about the facade change on Grand Boulevard and how excited I was for that mural, and they took it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that's an appropriate place for it, and that would be a completely different experience.
I think
And it
really
was
what
also
we're
not
suggesting
advertising.
is that it's, yes,
All.
it's two things. It's not advertising, and second, it's based on circulations of pedestrians,
Right.
not
Yes.
vehicular.
Yes.
And there's a big difference there.
Huge difference.
Difference.
So it only becomes truly interactive when one can participate with it, similar to how digital
Without having
graffiti
an
does every
accident.
year as
Yes.
you walk around.
Absolutely.
If you have to have a car accident to participate
Yeah,
in it
exactly. You
adequately,
don't
then
want that.
there's a problem.
So, yeah.
Yep. I think this is a great discussion. I know you probably want to wrap up, but there's a lot here. That's one of the reasons, that this was so problematic when it came up with that past issue. But I think you do have to, and I agree with getting some. I've been talking to the CAA about this. They do have opinions, and I think it would be great to get some opinions. But one thing, when I read this language, I thought, gosh, that is leaving a ton up in the air. Because I think, first and foremost, yes, it cannot be advertising. It cannot have the name of their business. It cannot depict their products. That's signage and advertising, and that's not right. That goes against the entire intent of the code, right? This part of the code. But also, you got to consider, where is it? For instance, even at a pedestrian level, if that mural that exists today, it happens to have a little sidewalk there, kind of weird little, not weird, but different little thing where people can stand and look at it. If it did not, and people were having to stand in the parking lot to look at it, you need to think about that. That's not good. That's not healthy for a business site, and that's just one example. But I think, too, you have to take driver distraction into account, because this is a high-speed roadway. If it's on a 45-mile-an-hour section of 98, maybe that's a little bit different. And those are things that you guys, this board, can take into consideration on a case-by-case basis. You also have to consider content. Could it be offensive? Is it going to be divisive? I mean, and I'll tell you guys this a little bit about this experience when we were working with CAA to get murals in the underpass in Inlet Beach, the pedestrian underpass. That was FDOT regulated, and because it's a state facility, they would not allow a single number or letter in those murals. Not one. They would not even allow us to put up a sponsorship plaque naming who sponsored that mural. And so they were trying to stay away from advertising, from offensiveness, but you can get offensive without using letters and numbers.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But it eliminates a lot of the possibilities. So they were pretty darn strict, and they had to approve the content of those murals. So it's opening up a lot. I support public art, and I don't think it's a bad idea in general, but you're going to have to really do this right.
And creating that clear separation between a deviation for signage and a deviation for facade keeps that clear. Because from a content regulation standpoint, anything that's in that realm of signage, that's protected. We can't trample there. And it's been
Well, you have specifics in your code related to signage, whereas if you're viewing a mural as not signage, then it is more subjective. So the only suggestion I would have for this paragraph is to define deviation versus exception, or
clean it.
somewhere else in the code to say that they are interchangeable.
Yeah, agreed, 100%.
So, just so there's no confusion there.
I'm going to use the paragraph. Structure of this sentence. Wall murals are allowed.
Mm-hmm.
Must be approved. I think we need.
I would agree with that, because I don't believe that there has been any review, Brooke or anybody has looked at any of this.
Once you all, hone in on the more finalized draft, our land use attorney will review it before planning commission, for sure.
And when you could clear that up, David, by just saying, and must be submitted as a deviation.
Mm-hmm.
That,
Must be, yeah.
just keep it simple.
Who can we email these thoughts to?
Well, it's.
To me.
Okay.
They're
Yep.
taken, right?
Yeah, the minutes are being taken, but certainly, any
Okay.
ideas or anything, I'm happy to take them.
I don't know, it's just, there's a lot there.
There is a lot there, and previously I had spoken to a couple of the commissioners, and they were kind of excited about us cleaning up some of the language and things. It's been a couple of years, and there's not as much willingness to have discussion individually. But if you want me to help at any of the presentation, or happy to come to any of the meetings and help with any of that.
And I think that would be a real opportunity for the board to ask questions of you all, and to have someone there to explain why these changes are being sought is really.
Just let me know when and where, because I think that we don't get a lot of feedback. They get the feedback,
right.
and whether or not they're sharing that with us, we don't hear as much. And I know some of the feedback they get. Isn't necessarily what we're trying to go with, and some of those voices are very loud. But I think that we have very, very clear and logical explanation for the types of things we're trying to encourage, and the reasons for that. And I think that that's a discussion that we can absolutely have, or at least they can be presented with a different perspective on that.
I would just add to that and advise that whoever that person is, which sounds like it might be you, to explain. I would emphasize where it's applicable, that a lot of this is some of this is trying to make code and compliance's job easier. That's the
100%.
big thing with the display, outdoor display of merchandise. That is, in my opinion, just horrible to try to enforce the way it is today, and that's why they don't do it. And why have a regulation if you're not going to enforce it? And so then they say, well, then just allow it everywhere. Do you know what this would look like? I mean, it's bad enough what little bit's out there, not quite little, what amount is out there now. So, yeah.
And the
I
rule's
think,
already broken, and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, it just does. So.
And I think anywhere you can emphasize that this is going to make code compliance's job easier, because the code compliance needs in this county are ballooning. And I've heard a lot of complaints about it from the BCC at the dais, and the cost of addressing it. So we're trying to, decrease that in some areas in here.
Or at least let it not be ambiguous what we're asking,
Yes.
Taking out some of the ambiguity of the code prevents those discussions. I don't want to just make it easier.
Just make it easier for
Parity
everybody.
equals
Applicants can
consistency, so, yeah.
included. Some of this makes it easier for the developer. I mean, they need that. So I'm ready to move on if you
Yeah,
are for my
absolutely.
comments anyway.
Yeah.
Page 21 or 23 of 32, there's 2 page numbering schemes going on. Letter F at the top, color of the raceway or mounting structure. It says must complement or match the architecture of the main building. I don't know why you would ever want that raceway to be any color other than the color of the facade it sits on. So I would just be very specific here, and the material. So I would just say something like color of raceway or mounting structure must be the same color and material, or as close as you can get it with a sign raceway, to that of the main building or buildings. That way, this is getting into a little bit of ambiguity, and I don't know why you'd want a different color backing.
That makes
Fine.
that makes sense.
Ever. You might have to make some exceptions to that material. Maybe just says match the architecture, color and the architecture of the main building, because I know raceways probably don't come in all building materials.
So really, the concern is the color and the texture.
So it fades away.
So it fades
yeah.
away.
Yes. Because I've seen them where they show and it's just like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't look good. Okay, couple other.
I'm sorry, you're saying remove the complement portion of that?
Yes.
Is just, it must
Yeah.
match the color and.
Color
okay.
and the architecture, match it, exactly, yes. On page 26, or 28 of 32, at the very bottom where it's talking about palms, it says palms shall be planted in clusters with an installation height of 12 feet. I would just say minimum. If they want to go bigger, I don't know how plants work, but I would just add minimum there, a minimum height of 12 feet or a minimum height of 12 feet. It's just a suggestion. This is a tiny detail, but
Hey, can you specify what paragraph you're on, what page?
It's 28 of 32 live oak alternatives.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, B. Okay.
very last sentence on the
Okay.
page, very bottom.
and I think the intent here was
Oh, with a minimum height is what you want to say? Okay.
Here it sounds like you're prescribing
Yes.
the height it
I
has to
see.
be.
Yes.
yeah.
I know.
With a minimum
Change it to
installed height
minimum.
of 12 feet.
Okay, this next one. I already talked about it a little bit. Just being on this board and sitting out here tonight. This issue of things coming to this board incomplete has just gotten completely out of hand.
Absolutely.
I don't know what else you can do, but I'm looking right now at page 28 or 30 of 32. About halfway down, number 4. This says projects shall not be placed on the design review board agenda until full compliance is certified by the corridor review specialist. I think that's a little bit vague, first of all. Are you talking about compliance with the code or compliance with submittal requirements? And if you're not, it needs to be both, first of all.
I'm
So
questioning why we're reviewing something that TRC hasn't approved.
I'm kind of questioning
That's
that
why
too.
I'm wondering, like, and I was kind of,
Yep.
let's get into that with you
Well,
at the beginning of the meeting.
realize
Like,
that that's standard.
I
That
don't-
the TRC always approves before it comes to us. So I was very surprised to hear that we were on the next day.
yeah, I'm tempted to
TRC.
just say if it's on our agenda and it hasn't been approved by TRC, or there's something happening on TRC side, that we have to table it. Like,
Absolutely.
it's not.
That was surprising.
That was
very
like, we had
surprising.
200 pages of information, but it's incomplete. We have an architect who's an hour late. Like, I don't.
Yes, and it happened with the propane tank.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta have what you gotta have.
Yeah.
And when it gets to here, it's unfair to the board, it's unfair to the applicant, it just does not work. We've talked about it and talked about it and talked about it for years. Something's gotta change to make it actually happen.
Agree. And I often, when I get the agenda, if I see that there's a big hole, I will email and ask that be taken care of before we get there. Sometimes I don't get a chance to, or sometimes I forget until the day before.
But that Circle K, you had, and I had, as a citizen, no idea what that building looked like.
Right.
None.
None.
Zero.
Yeah.
Like, I looked through it and I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at.
And they're like, oh, well, we don't, of course you're approving signage, but we don't have any signage shown. I don't submit signage. And I was like, okay, I don't care what you submit.
Right.
But if you're the applicant and you're the one taking the paperwork that you're collecting from all the other consultants, you have to get all the things if you want it approved.
Yes.
The Kings had a question about how these things get submitted.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Last
Go
month,
ahead, 'cause
they
you
were
were
just saying last month, same thing. We didn't have all the things we needed to make a decision. I remember that, and then this time it was even worse. So.
Yeah, and like I said, typically, it has been getting worse, but typically they go through a review process before it gets to us. And so if it's a major or a minor, TRC has to approve it first before we get it, which is a surprise that this one.
Someone needs to upload everything that was submitted.
Right, and it should. And then a lot of these are less than minors or the signage things, and we are the only review board for that. And so
Yes.
that has to go through staff review, and staff has to think that it's ready to be approved, and we're just kind of.
Can we put in the code that if a minor development order comes before this board that needs to have prior TRC approval before we're even going to review it, or would you
Or
not
any-
suggest
I
that?
took note of
Any
that.
or-
That can
development
be,
order.
that can be it.
That's
It's just a lot of
that's been
pressure on
standard
us
for
when
years.
we're-
I mean, like that's been standard.
That was
for
probably just a
years.
glitch because it happened that these were a day apart.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's the case. I think if Tim was here, he probably would have continued it.
Agree,
Okay.
and
I've never seen that
now
happen
that
before.
now that you're doing so many TRC meetings a month, that's probably creating a little bit more,
That's right.
continuity issues. But yeah, Tim does.
There's no reason to review something twice. Inevitably, it's going to come back to us.
Yeah,
So
it
it's like, why
should,
waste
yeah.
the time or the applicant's time when it hasn't gone through the due process to get to
Yes.
us first?
Agreed, and
So-
that isn't one that I have. Like
Okay.
I said, that was a surprise to me that hadn't cleared TRC yet.
That poor guy drove all the way from Georgia.
Oh my God.
But anyway, okay, so I think that needs to be
Right.
clarified. Maybe I don't know what you mean there. Is it fully compliant according to the corridor review specialist before it comes to this board, in their opinion? Or is that just saying it's compliant with submittal? I don't know, because if it is, it's not in the right place, because submittals is letter B next. The other thing, a finer point, I don't think, is this the entire code? I don't think it is. Maybe it's just sections that were changed.
It's just the section, yeah.
So a question would be, is there somewhere in the code, I cannot remember, I'm already getting fuzzy, where it requires them to submit color and material samples? And then
in the application portion, right?
Okay, maybe it should get added in the code. Anywhere we can just encourage that to happen, because that's a common theme, has been for years. David, you know, when we used to be, you know, so if it can be clarified somewhere that they have to provide them in their submittal, and they have to make it to the board the night that they're being heard.
Yeah.
I don't know whose responsibility all that part should be, but that's really, really important. It is hard to review a project without them. It really is.
You said color and texture samples.
Well, it's color and materials.
And that
and sometimes that's not necessary if it's hard. If it's all hardy board.
And I think that's part of the application piece and the part that you send out in the email. That would be helpful. I mean, but
I think repetition is good. I mean,
one thing to say though, like, because I sit on some like community design review boards, we typically don't put that stuff in the code because it allows you to change it without having to go through this whole process.
But we'll never change wanting color samples. I can tell you that much right now.
That's true. I think we'll always.
I've just put it somewhere. That's just my opinion. Last thing.
More efficient.
Yeah.
When it comes to us.
Last thing, and this is sort of going back to that last project, the Circle K. I really wanted to talk about that tonight. So unfortunately I couldn't. But first of all, I lived on South Wall Street for years. I have huge concerns about that access.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I know Public Works has probably good reasons for not wanting an ingress and egress on 98 because it's right there at that intersection. But good Lord, that is nuts right there. That's just a commentary. But where it applies here, and I don't even know if this applies, if this is even appropriate for here, but I'm going to put it out there anyway, and I will say it when they come back to the design review board. Is there any way to encourage, I know we cannot require it, these applicants to attempt to get a local business in versus a national chain fast food restaurant or whatever? I mean, because now that we're allowing them, they're popping up. The Burger King at, you know, the
everywhere.
one down, I mean, and I actually talked to a long time local restaurant, multiple restaurant owner in the area where that was going to be. And he said, yes, we would love the opportunity to at least submit for a local owned, local concept that is not a chain, even for fast food, to go in these places. We're just going to end up getting it to be like Anywhere USA, the more of these national chains that come in.
Use your sense of place, but that might have to be considered in zoning or
I don't know if that goes here or somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it has to. That would have to be like where they would have to say that these types of uses are prohibited.
I think that's going to be hard to do because coming from a commercial developer, like it's all about the rent.
Yeah, your anchor tenants.
I mean, it really
drive
is.
The money.
And I'm all for the local.
And they're not required to
38
disclose
taco.
who they're bringing in.
That's why I said it wouldn't be a requirement. It'd have to be an encouragement. You know.
We can certainly look at encouragement language, but I don't know.
Because I don't think they ever even consider it.
Yeah, the structure of encouragement could be that the code could be slightly different for.
There's incentive based.
You could get an incentive, or impact fees. Mm-hmm. A lot of people would be willing to take the hit on tenant with paying less in impact fees from a development standpoint.
Great carrot.
I don't know how we would make
That's
a distinction.
still tough, though, I think.
With the mobility fee, other than utilities, is the only county jurisdiction impact, and I don't know that we have the ability.
It would be a traffic impact on a national chain versus a local chain, basically.
I don't know that we could do that legally.
I don't know what the LDC would let you do.
More than one sign that matches the sign
Or
that
the
you're applying
comprehensive
for
plan, rather.
exists in
I
the
don't
state
know.
of Florida. it
You
can
get
only
it,
be-
the national chains that have all the money to pull the lawsuit about
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
not
yeah.
giving them the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
signage
Well, but
rights.
how did 38 eliminate it for so long?
We
Well-
didn't have enough population.
How, like,
Well,
They-
I
they
don't know
looked
that.
at- They chose not to be here more than, they
Yeah.
didn't want to meet, they didn't want to meet the standards.
A lot of this has, but now this is a little complicated when they're in a gas station.
Yeah.
Sometimes it still applies, but a lot of what has kept it out is not allowing drive-throughs.
yeah.
Because a fast food restaurant, in most cases, won't even open if they can't have a drive-through. I don't know, I know that the code was changed several years ago to allow them on 98 in certain zoning areas, and I don't know if that's the same for 30A. Are they allowed on 30A?
I don't believe it is. No, I
That's
believe
what's
that,
keeping them out on 30A, whoever asked that question.
it's just a particular zoning district that
Mhm.
prohibits
The
it,
standards
and it's
is what's
just the
keeping them out.
coastal
Yeah,
center.
The code.
the difficulties, they
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, so that, but a lot of times these gas station ones don't have a drive-through because they're getting the pickup traffic from the gas station, so, I don't know. That's a hard one, but it's
Subway
happening.
number 2 billion.
Yeah, it's
coming your way.
happening for sure. So that's all I have specifics, but I would love to say it was interesting looking at this from someone not on the board's perspective and looking at it holistically all at once. Kudos. I hope it all gets approved. There's some really, really good changes in this, really good, from a lot of perspectives. And I just wanted to say to staff and you guys, great job, and I hope it keeps on moving forward. We'll keep our
So
fingers crossed.
process-wise, would you need an action from us? Or, because we've been doing it just as a discussion item without actually making any kind of action,
Right.
official action on our board's part.
I think you've given staff guidance on some additional changes, and we'll certainly accept any prior to
Can
us
you-
bringing it back.
I mean, it was an action item on today's agenda, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Does it need to be an action item, an official action, or is staff going to move forward at this point? Do we want to ask staff to bring it back to us again before
I
we
would
move
prefer
forward?
that,
Okay.
to be honest.
Okay.
We'll make some of these changes and bring them back, and then from there, it's just a recommendation of approval.
Okay,
at
so
that point.
tabling, I guess,
Continuing.
continuing is continuing to a known date. Tabling is putting,
I think we could make these changes by the next meeting.
okay, then let's do it.
Yeah.
Could I make one other quick comment? Just going back to, on page 30 of 32, that paragraph 4 about the projects will not be placed on the agenda. Maybe split that into two. One, they shall not be placed on the agenda until the application is complete. And then I think the second item, I think the intent of this paragraph might have been that if it requires a deviation request, it needs to be presented. That's what the intent of this paragraph is. If it's not in full compliance, it can't go on the agenda.
Well, let me ask you this. Can a deviation be part of a regular application, or is it a separate entirely?
It has
So
to be
I-
standalone.
Yeah, I've asked
Okay.
that question of Tim before, because I think that might be helpful for our applicants. But the answer I had back was they kind of treat it as a separate legal item. But that might be a question for Brooke. If it's advertised as having some, could it just be one application, one situation? If it's advertised saying that they're going to be requesting deviation
As part of
as part of the overall package.
Yeah, okay.
I think, because we talk about them as one item, and
But we frequently have the issue come up
Yeah.
that we want to offer someone, I did a couple meetings ago, we had we wanted to make a change, but we couldn't because it would make it a deviation and they
And
wanted their
so
approval.
that would be another question, because that the way it has been explained to me in the past was that any change had to be advertised as such for public comment and awareness purposes. But
You can figure out a way around that.
Yeah,
We
that'd be
were
great.
hamstrung.
No, I think, I don't know, I'll certainly get with Brooke.
yeah, just to ask the
arrange-
question, because that's a good point, because we do try to offer design solutions.
Well, what's the difference in a substantial deviation?
So here's what Brooke's
That
response.
distinct? Do we make that distinction in here?
I don't know.
No,
That's why
we
I'm
don't.
asking. Yeah.
discussions that I have had with current land use attorney has indicated that she does not like us approving things with conditions anyway. So she's probably not going to be game for us having that type of design discussion and approval. So that might be dead in the water.
If it gets into subjectivity, maybe in discussion, or like,
Don't know.
I'll talk to her
Yeah.
about it. I think if there's specificity in the ad that speaks to the project and the requested deviation, but I don't know.
We've got a subtle,
You
there's a subtle
defend
difference
it
here. So, the first comment had to do with breaking paragraph 4 into the two pieces. That had to do with either needed to be in full compliance. Applications have to be complete. But what we were just talking about was board, at least I understood, the board suggesting what would be a deviation to the code as a solution, not the applicant asking for a deviation.
And,
Sure.
and we couldn't approve that previously because it didn't get advertised as a deviation, that we had to approve.
I mean,
within our-
you had to approve or deny what was presented. You
Correct.
couldn't,
Correct.
you don't have the
Create a
flexibility.
deviation, Yeah.
Right.
Now, we have had applicants in the past, when they thought we approved something better that required a deviation request and their timeline allowed it, they would just have us continue it and come back to the next meeting.
Right.
This particular person chose to get a sign
Go,
that they
yeah.
acknowledged was not as good as the sign that they could have had approved.
And I don't want people to be afraid of asking us for deviations, because I think sometimes that's what feedback we kind of get. Like they feel like it's like a BZA request, like they have to have that extraordinary justification.
There's a cost to the number of applications.
I don't know. I guess there is it a separate fee for deviations? I
well,
don't know.
there's a cost to a project schedule regardless. So
Oh, yeah,
if
yeah,
you're,
yeah, the
so
practical-
if you're,
yeah.
from a practical standpoint, I can understand why people don't want to have to come back, even if the design is better if they do. That's not in their best interest, some of them. They want to save money. So they're not going to
Totally understood,
keep
yeah.
paying those people and delaying that schedule by another month.
I mean,
you
the
know?
architect
So, and I
just
completely
drove
get
down
that.
here from Marietta.
Yeah, I would love to be able to
Fair
sit up
amount.
here and have chairwoman say, we would love to be able to give you this deviation. We all agree this is a better deal. Can we do that today? That's really what we'd like to be
Yeah.
able to do.
Absolutely.
But I could see from an attorney's side why they would say, well, due process, you got to be able to defend it on the backside too. So you're going to do that for everybody? Like, what are your guidelines here? So
Yeah,
the
and
once every 30 days thing makes it harder.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be the feedback is 'cause she has indicated to me before that she doesn't like us having conditions on things.
And we dictate what a substantial deviation is from a deviation in this code.
Well,
Make it easier
I think for any deviation, it's a deviation. If
It doesn't matter to you what it is.
If it's not specifically allowable,
Like-
it has to be a deviation.
Maybe
For
it's the way
signage specifically, it's because of their logos.
If they could just say minor deviations for signage can be, if solutions are, I mean, that's the only thing we need
Approved
that
in the
for.
meeting, like especially because it all comes down to usually it's their logo and how their logo fits within the signage typically.
All this one
because-
was, their logo was stacked.
Yeah.
Because of our code and the height, they had taken it, because they can meet their name by unstacking it and putting the two words like this, but it looked horrible on the building.
Yeah.
And we suggested in the meeting, why don't you stack it? And they said, oh, Tim said we can't because it's gonna, and we're like, oh yeah, that does make sense. And so we're like, well, we think it looks better. And he says, that's actually our logo is stacked. He's like, we had to break our logo to do this.
So we had to approve something that didn't look as good as something that could have been a lot better.
This is exclusive to signage.
Yeah.
This doesn't
Correct.
come up in any other situation other than signage.
I mean, this would be to try to appease the, what if we had it required unanimous or higher standard vote,
Super majority.
majority or something like that? In other words,
And I'm speaking for her. I'm just based on the couple of conversations that we've had, she doesn't,
yeah, I mean, just trying to explain that, look, this is going to be used for things that are no-brainers.
Yeah.
And so that would be how do we demonstrate it's a no-brainer? It takes.
Well, now that we have a full board,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't hurt my feelings too much.
But I mean, if there's any way to to get there, we'd love to get there, because I mean, it's in the public interest.
Yeah, I understand. I'll have that discussion, certainly.
We never took action, did we? No.
Did we decide we're gonna continue this to the next meeting?
We did.
Okay.
Continue.
Continue? Okay.
Continue, yes, make that,
All
I
right,
make
okay,
that
so we have
motion.
motion, we have
Second.
motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Motion, second. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Almost exactly.
My apologies my apologies. I don't like to go past 6 o'clock.
Hey, we needed to discuss this. This is great. It's a big ordinance. I mean, it's.
It is, and well, we've been discussing it.
And this was you guys, but this is the
Yeah,
first time I
especially
was
you
able to
guys.
read through it. I had it for, a month, and I was able to go through it, but I don't know y'all's intent prior either, so I just tried to figure out what, so.
Brand new.
Yeah, well, you're coming from.
I don't want to be trapped.
Yeah. Yeah.